populism has been on the rise in the United States for years. As the Great Recession of 2007 to 2008 undermined voters' faith in established elites and political parties, populism surged in the Tea Party movement on the political right in 2009 and the Occupy Wall Street movement on the political left in 2011. More recently, populism has found expression in Donald Trump's MAGA movement and the left-wing economic populist rhetoric of U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders. Anti-Semitism has also gained strength in the U.S. since the mid-2010s, as indicated by data on anti-Semitic behavior, anti-Semitic attitudes, and Jewish perceptions of anti-Semitism. Michael just talked about some of that data. These trends, I would say, raise an important question. What is the relationship, if any, between populism and anti-Semitism? My co-author, Anna Malusky, and I used survey data gathered from the state of Wisconsin last summer to examine this relationship. And here because Anna is an advanced PhD student at the University of Wisconsin, I always like to publicize the great things that our advanced PhD students are doing, this is my co-author here. I imagine that some folks here in this room will not be very familiar with Wisconsin, so let me tell you a little bit about Wisconsin. Located in the north central part of the United States, Wisconsin has an area of nearly 170,000 square kilometers and a population of nearly 6 million. About 90% of Wisconsin's population is of Northern European origin. African Americans are the largest minority group. They represent about 6% of the population and mostly reside in Milwaukee, the state's one large metropolitan city. Native Americans, the descendants of the indigenous inhabitants, represent less than 1% of the population. Many reside in or near Milwaukee, but most live in one of 11 Native American reservations in the state. The state's economy includes three main components: a manufacturing and industrial belt in the southeast, dairy agriculture in the southern two-thirds of the state, and tourism and recreational activity in the state's sparsely settled northern forest and lake country. Now, Wisconsin's a good case for this study for several reasons. First of all, Wisconsin is a closely divided swing state and one of several Rust Belt states in the Midwest and Great Lakes region that have played an outsized role in deciding U.S. presidential elections since 2016. This gives political developments in the state broader significance. Second, Wisconsin exhibits many of the social conditions that may activate populist attitudes, such as political polarization, rural-urban divides, and perceptions of governmental inequity. It's therefore not surprising that populism has made strong inroads in the state. Donald Trump won Wisconsin in the 2016 presidential election, becoming the first Republican presidential candidate to do so since 1984. Sanders won the 2016 Wisconsin Democratic presidential primary, beating national frontrunner Hillary Clinton by 13 percentage points. In 2020, Sanders lost the Wisconsin Democratic presidential primary to Joe Biden, but still garnered nearly a third of the vote. Trump narrowly lost Wisconsin in the 2020 presidential election, but then won it again in 2024. And third, like populism, anti-Semitism is growing in Wisconsin. Mirroring national trends, anti-Semitic incidents in Wisconsin began a sharp rise in 2015 after years in which the number of incidents was flat or declining. According to the Milwaukee Jewish Federation, Wisconsin's number of reported and confirmed anti-Semitic incidents rose in 2023 for the 8th consecutive year, marking a cumulative increase of 570% since 2015. Although Wisconsin's reported anti-Semitic incidents decreased from 2023 to 2024, the data still reflect an overall cumulative increase of 459% since 2015. Now, our study adopts the dominant and widely used ideational approach to populism because it is empirically oriented and well-suited to comparative research and the development of middle-range theory. In the written paper, I talk about some alternative conceptual approaches. I won't go into that here. Following other recent studies that take this approach, we define populism as a thin-centered ideology that divides society into a virtuous, homogeneous people and a corrupt elite, and which asserts that politics should express the popular will. Previous studies distinguish three constituent subcomponents of populism. First, anti-elitism. Second, people-centrism or popular sovereignty. And three, a Manichaean or anti-pluralist worldview. And scholars are generally agreed that populism is an attitudinal syndrome that requires the co-presence of all three subcomponents. So any one of these by itself wouldn't give you populism. It's the co-presence of all three that constitutes populism. Scholars have constructed multiple survey scales to measure the demand side of populism, that's to say populist attitudes among voters in the Americas and in Europe. We use the scale developed by Castano Silva and others, published in 2018, which was found to be one of the three best performing scales in a comprehensive assessment published in 2020. Like virtually all populism scales, it measures populism independently of left-right ideological orientation. This design reflects the underlying definition of populism as a thin-centered ideology attached to thicker ideologies like socialism or conservatism. It also reflects the empirical finding that populist attitudes are not necessarily correlated with the left or right across countries. And it also reflects the methodological concern that ideology would otherwise become a confounding variable in regression analysis if we didn't do this. Now, to measure anti-Semitism, we use the generalized anti-Semitism scale developed by Allington, Hirsch, and Katz, published in 2022. In other contexts, I would maybe say more about this scale and defend the use of this scale. I don't think I need to get into that here, but I'm happy to answer questions about that later. It's composed of two subscales, the Judeophobic anti-Semitism subscale, which tests for endorsement of classic prejudicial attitudes, the old anti-Semitism, if you will, and the anti-Zionist anti-Semitism subscale, which tests for endorsement of anti-Semitic attitudes expressed in relation to Israel and its supporters, the new anti-Semitism. This design is advantageous because it allows us to see whether populist attitudes are associated with both of these subscales, only one of the subscales, or neither subscale. Now, there are good reasons to expect a relationship between populism and anti-Semitism. One of them is historical precedents. Again, in the paper, I have a lengthier discussion about the populist party in American history at the end of the 19th century and anti-Semitic rhetoric in the populist movement at that time. I won't go into that in detail here, but again, happy to answer questions about that later. Also, another reason to expect a relationship between populism and anti-Semitism are suggestions in recent scholarship that anti-elite conspiratorial views of power may provide an ideological bridge between these two attitudes. So already in very recently published work, people are suggesting that this is a possible or even likely way in which these attitudes become connected. However, there is surprisingly little survey-based empirical research in English exploring the possible connections between populist and anti-Semitic attitudes today. A recent study by the political scientists Peffley and Rohrschneider, published in 2023, using German survey data from 2020, is a rare exception. They found that individuals with stronger populist attitudes were more likely to endorse anti-Semitic statements independently of partisanship, demographic variables, general social and political orientations, and perceived performance of the German government and economy. So we set out to determine whether populist and anti-Semitic attitudes are similarly related in the United States. This is an important set of findings about German public opinion, but they can't necessarily be generalized to other countries, including the US. So we wanted to see if we would find something similar. We use survey data from a representative, probability-based online panel of adult Wisconsin residents, aged 18 years and older, interviewed by the University of Wisconsin Survey Center. The panel includes 3,566 members who previously registered and completed an in-depth survey about their attitudes, experiences, and socio-demographic characteristics. We fielded our questions to panel members as part of a bigger omnibus survey that had lots of other questions in addition to ours. That omnibus survey was conducted between July 30th, 2025 and August 18th, 2025. Of the registered panel members, 2,543 completed the survey. Our dependent variable is the generalized anti-Semitism scale, including the 6-item Judeophobic anti-Semitism subscale and the 6-item anti-Zionist anti-Semitism subscale. You can see the questions here. Responses to each item were measured with a 5-point Likert scale. So strongly disagree, somewhat disagree, neither disagree nor agree, somewhat agree, strongly agree. We rescaled the overall anti-Semitism scale from 0 to 1, treating it as a continuous variable. This is consistent with the elastic view of anti-Semitism, which emphasizes the diffusion of anti-Semitic ideas throughout society rather than strict categorical thresholds that separate anti-Semites from others. In our sample, the mean score on the generalized anti-Semitism scale is 0.26. Again, remember, this is on a scale of 0 to 1. The mean score on the Judeophobic anti-Semitism subscale is 0.19, and the mean score on the anti-Zionist anti-Semitism subscale is 0.34. Our independent variable is the populism scale developed by Castano Silva and others, published in 2018. The specific survey items in the scale I want to point out to you are designed to capture separately each of the 3 core components of populism that I mentioned a moment ago. First, anti-elitism. Second, people-centrism, the notion of a good, homogenous people as a political actor. And third, this Manichaean outlook, the view of politics as a moral struggle between good and evil. Responses to each item were measured with the same 5-point Likert scale used for anti-Semitism. And again, we rescaled the overall populism score from 0 to 1, treating it as a continuous variable. In our sample, the mean score on the populism scale was 0.3, again, on a scale ranging from 0 to 1. In our analyses, the first model presents the bivariate relationship between populism and anti-Semitism. And the second model, we control for a range of socio-demographic characteristics, including education, age, urbanicity, sex, race, and income. In the third model, we add a control for religion. And in the fourth model, we add controls for political party identification and left-right ideological self-placement on economic issues and on social issues measured separately. That's how the University of Wisconsin Survey Center did it. Okay. So this is what I just told you. Okay, now this is the stuff that you're interested in. In Table 2, the outcome is the generalized anti-Semitism scale. So we want to know how is populism influencing the attitudes on the generalized anti-Semitism scale. We find a positive, statistically significant relationship between populism and the generalized anti-Semitism scale in Model 1. This relationship is robust to controls for socio-demographic characteristics in Model 2, the control for religion in Model 3, and controls for political party identification and political ideology in Model 4. So even when we add all of these control variables, we still find a positive and statistically significant association here. We also find that education, age, race, household income, and religion have statistically significant relationships with anti-Semitism, not surprisingly, as measured by the generalized anti-Semitism scale. With the exception of age and religion, the associations are in the expected directions. And again, if there are questions about age and religion later, I can come back to that. Now, in Table 3, we, instead of looking at the entire generalized anti-Semitism scale, Now we're just looking at the first subscale, the Judeophobic anti-Semitism subscale that measures classic old anti-Semitism. Here we observe a positive, statistically significant relationship between populism and the subscale in Model 5. The relationship remains positive, but loses its statistical significance when socio-demographic controls and the control for religion are added in Model 6 and 7, respectively. But in Model 8, where controls for political party identification and ideology are added, the relationship regains its statistical significance. We also find that education, age, sex, race, household income, religion, and political ideology have statistically significant relationships with Judeophobic anti-Semitism. Except for age, the associations are, again, in the expected directions. And then finally, Table 4. So now we're looking only at the anti-Zionist anti-Semitism subscale, trying to zero in on this. We observe a positive, statistically significant relationship between populism and the anti-Zionist anti-Semitism subscale in Model 9. This relationship is robust to controls for socio-demographic characteristics, religion, party ID, and ideology. We also find that education, age, urbanicity, religion, party ID, and political ideology have statistically significant relationships with anti-Zionist anti-Semitism. And again, with the exception of age and religion, the associations are in the expected directions. Okay. Now that I've made your eyes glaze over with regression tables, let's talk about what this means. So to sum up, we have used survey data gathered from a representative panel of Wisconsin adults between July 30th and August 18th, 2025 to examine whether and how populist and anti-Semitic attitudes are related in the United States. Across multiple model specifications, regression analysis shows that populist attitudes are moderately associated with anti-Semitic attitudes, generalized Judeophobic and anti-Zionist, even after controlling for other well-known socio-demographic and ideological predictors of prejudice. In the Judeophobic anti-Semitism sequence, the effect briefly attenuates in intermediary models, but returns to statistical significance in the full specification. And the fact that populism predicts generalized Judeophobic and anti-Zionist anti-Semitism in fully adjusted models indicates that the association is not limited to just one expression or one type of anti-Semitism. The effect magnitude and comparative strength of populist attitudes are non-trivial. Because we rescaled both populism and the anti-Semitism indices from 0 to 1, the coefficients can be interpreted as percentage point shifts on the outcome scale. And the fully adjusted models moving from the bottom to the top of the populism scale is associated with a 9 to 10 point increase on a 0 to 100 anti-Semitism scale. These are substantively meaningful changes on indices whose observed standard deviations are 0.16, 0.18, and 0.21. Moreover, relative to other statistically significant predictors in the full models, the populism coefficient is comparable in magnitude to many socio-demographic effects and only somewhat smaller than the largest education and age differences. Now, the religion coefficients include one unusually large effect for Jewish respondents, but this reflects rejection of anti-Semitism by its victims rather than a typical covariate benchmark. Most other religion contrasts are materially smaller than the populism slope. Now, if populism and anti-Semitism are associated, and I think this is what I have shown you, how might this pattern be explained? Our findings help to rule out several possibilities. The persistence of the association after controlling for education, age, income, religion, party ID, and ideological self-placement, and its reemergence for the Judeophobic anti-Semitism outcome and the fully adjusted model help to rule out simpler accounts that would attribute the association to socio-demographic differences, religious affiliation, or partisan or ideological sorting. nor is the association between populism and anti-Semitism just an anti-Israel story. If that were the case, we'd only find a positive, statistically significant association with the anti-Zionist anti-Semitism subscale. The populism scale used in our study, I want to again remind you of this, aggregates three distinct subcomponents. Those are anti-elitism, people-centrism, and a Manichaean outlook. When we examined these components separately in auxiliary analysis, we find that the Manichaean outlook and anti-elitism are positively associated with anti-Semitism after controlling for standard socio-demographic, religious, partisan, and ideological differences. But people-centrism has no statistically significant relationship with anti-Semitism, or in some models is even negatively associated with it. This pattern suggests that the association between populism and anti-Semitism is primarily driven by populism's Manichaean and anti-elitist subcomponents, but not people-centrism, which may even attenuate the relationship. This implication is consistent with the scholarship on anti-Semitism, which frequently underscores its Manichaean character. In addition, anti-Semitic discourse often portrays Jews, in the words of Karen Stegner, as an abstract, intangible elite who secretly rule the world and oppress peoples and nations. Hence, it's likely that a Manichaean outlook and anti-elitism make anti-Semitic tropes about Jewish wickedness and power more plausible to high populism respondents and facilitate anti-Jewish scapegoating. Thank you.